Pride of Detroit POD wrapping up for segment 3. Unfortunately, we've had a casualty. Ryan Matthews is down. The cause is crying child. So just me and Jeremy here for segment 3. And really, it's our fault because we've just spent way too long yelling about Hendon Hooker and Jared Goff during the break. Might have to clip some of that later for something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
If you,
It was
just
it was
another
it was
perk of being part of our live show is more of that argument. That's going to be well ahead. That we're probably going to be doing a
yeah.
lot more than just
But I also get paid when you download and listen to the podcast. So I would like you on the podcast to still do that. Thank you very much. We have to talk about. We haven't gotten to Broderick Martin yet. He's the last guy, literally the last guy before I think compensatory picks in round 3, and then we've got the 2 day 3 picks, Colby Sorsdal and Sorsdal or Sorsdale. I keep wanting to add the e to the end of the name. I think it's Sorsdal, and Antoine Green. Ooh, we'll get to them in a second, but let's start with. But all 3 of these guys have something together. They all played in the East-West Shrine Bowl game, um, which for those who don't remember, who might be a little younger or don't really know much about the East-West Shrine game, this was basically the original like big all-star college football game. And like even before the Senior Bowl, it was kind of reduced in importance. Lions did kind of send plenty of people there. It's not why they got chosen, but I just find it fascinating that we have 3 Shrine Game participants being selected by the Lions for their last 3 picks. Starting with Broderick Martin from Western Kentucky. I get it, Jeremy. I know Conference USA and the Hilltoppers aren't exactly on the radar for a lot of Lions writers. When they think of Bowling Green, maybe they think of the town that's south of Toledo, not the one in Kentucky. So I get why they might not know it. I know he was kind of off the radar by name standards for a lot of the draft guides out there. But just to give you an idea of it, he's a big boy. He's 330 some pounds, and he plays. Wait, no, or am I getting him confused with Sorsdal for the weight?
no
I
no
could be.
he's
Oh,
somewhere
that's
around
right.
there.
That's right. Okay, okay. But he plays nose tackle,
Yes.
which is intriguing for the Detroit Lions. I think it indicates that maybe they want some competition with Isaiah Buggs or someone to rotate with him in that regard. But they traded a lot of capital
Yeah.
to get here. They traded 122, 139, and 168 to move up to 96 to take Broderick Martin. So what do we like? What do we think of the pick? What do we think of the trade value that was made to get to the pick? And do we have any clearer intentions on Detroit's defensive line and its personnel?
Yeah, I mean it's a fascinating pick, right? Getting a guy that wasn't on many people's boards and then using all that draft capital to do so, and then even on top of that, the idea of getting a rotational nose tackle in the 3rd round doesn't sound like great value, but I do think this team values nose tackle more than a lot of other teams do. And we knew this was a priority for the Lions. We knew that they thought Isaiah Buggs is a really good player for them and probably their starting nose tackle, but what they didn't want is him to play 60 to 70 to 80% of the snaps anymore. And so Broderick Martin is that dude who's going to come in and split time with him. Will he eventually usurp him? Maybe. You know, Isaiah Buggs only signed, a 2-year deal this offseason, so there is a potential long-term need there. I don't know what he's capable of, if I'm being completely honest. I haven't watched a lot of his tape. I think a lot of people like, his ability to stop the run. We know the Lions weren't very good at that last year. Everyone always points to that Carolina game. I do think they got better as the season went on, but this was a big need for them. We talked endlessly about the team for a defensive tackle, and a lot of us were wondering what kind it would be. Would they get a 3 tech that would be able to kick Aleem in so that he can play a little bit nose tackle? Would they get a nose tackle so that they can keep Aleem at the 3 and just rotate Isaiah Buggs? That's clearly what they did, and I think that's what they preferred because they like Aleem at the 3. They like a little bit of quickness, a little twitch. He's got a little twinkle toes at 3 tech so that they can get a pass rush from there. I don't know if Broderick Martin brings a lot in terms of pass rush from the nose, but he's just a big run stuffer. And my question is okay, but was that worth trading everything you had in day 3 to get him? I don't know. And unfortunately, we didn't really get much of an answer from Brad Holmes because we have these press conferences at the end of each night, and this was the night in which they went crazy, right? They did the
Yeah,
The two trades
four
up,
picks, four picks on night 3.
right?
Yeah,
Two
on
trades
day,
up,
day
two trade
2.
downs, and everyone was more interested in Brian Branch. Everyone was a lot interested in asking a bunch of questions on Hendon Hooker. We got almost nothing from Brad Holmes on Broderick Martin. So that's one that I think we still kind of need to figure out why he was so enamored with this guy. But there were some people out there that said like this guy was a sleeper. People were sleeping on him, and so it's one of those picks where it's like maybe he knew something that we didn't, and I'm willing to accept that. It just on the surface it was like that's one of the weirder picks of the weekend.
Yeah, especially since you look at kind of the board right after him, the compensatory picks. I know Ryan has, okay, letting you behind the scenes on our show notes. Ryan has next players available on the board that the Lions passed over there. And he has Jake Moody at 99. This is clearly a joke. Jake Moody he was chosen over a kicker, but he was chosen over Siaki Ika,
right?
The Baylor nose tackle, who went 2 picks later to the Cleveland Browns. And I think some people had consternation on that. But I think in this case, Ika is definitely the name you knew.
Right.
And I think people are saying there were other reasons why Ika was sliding as much as he did. This does feel like they kind of scouted Martin to a T, and they had reasons to select him. I'd be curious to see what Brad Holmes' reasons were to select Martin over someone like Ika. But I guess I'll trust his judgment in this regard because his specialty is college scouting. And this is, again, Conference USA is a FBS conference. It's not like Western Kentucky is a completely unknown school. But at the same time, it's definitely, as you said, not someone who is on the radar. As far as the value for trading up, I think you would have said this here yourself, Jeremy. I don't think, yeah, it seems like maybe a lot to trade up, but they weren't going to use the 122, 139, 168. Like we've talked about this before about they're in a position where a lot of day 3 picks, especially late where they would be picking there, probably aren't really in line to really be making fitting into the roster somewhere. So I don't mind that they traded the picks. I guess you just have to see if Martin was the right investment to put those picks into.
Yeah. And listen, as a writer, I appreciate getting rid of as many day 3 picks as possible. So, yeah.
We had an easy day 3.
It was nice. Let's get into that. Let's talk some day 3.
Okay. Well, we just going from, if you thought we were going from Western Kentucky talking about people not really watching Hilltoppers football, can I interest you in some William and Mary football? FCS. People were I was actually getting questions from the Roar of the Lions guys who I was drinking with on day 3 about where William and Mary even is.
I couldn't tell you.
I can. It's in Williamsburg, Virginia, a town I lived in 2 years of my life. It is it is kind of considered the quote unquote public Ivy. It's a very good school whose football alumni includes Mike Tomlin. Colby Sorsdal, excuse me, I'm going to do that a lot, is your pick from William and Mary, whose nickname of the team you're going to have to Google because I don't know what it is after just gussing them up a little bit. But he has had 46 starts at right tackle. People, I think fans have really jumped the gun to try to declare him that he's going to transition to guard. I would want to see what they do with him. I know at the East-West Shrine game, he was playing a little. He wasn't playing fully in interior. I think his arm length is leading people to believe that he will convert to guard, along with wishful thinking for the Detroit Lions that they are going to resolve their guard problem with him there. But I think this guy is, in spite of the measurables, if he's going to be on a roster, it might be as depth at tackle somewhere, just because he still fits that very well.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, just because a guy played all his snaps at right tackle does not mean that's where he's going to play. I also don't think
that just because you really want him at guard doesn't mean he's automatically converting to guard either.
No, but I think you see a lot of times with guys like this, especially small school guys like this, when the physical body fits more of a guard, that's where you're gonna get your best shot in the NFL. And so a guy that is so unrefined coming from a small school at right tackle, I think you're going to go through a lot of development anyways with a small school prospect. Why not move him inside? And that I really do think that's what they're going to do with him. I do understand your point though, that like there's probably a little wishful thinking in there too, because the Lions have a guard problem in the long term. But with to me, like, I am willing to completely, again, this is a guy that was off a lot of people's boards in the media, not considered even a draftable prospect. But when I have two people vouching for this guy that demand a lot of respect when it comes to scouting offensive linemen, and that is former NFL offensive lineman Brian Baldinger and Duke Mayweather.
I was watching some of the clips I think Baldy was putting up on Twitter.
Right.
And yeah, he really likes Colby.
Yeah, and Duke Manyweather is a guy who works with the best offensive linemen in the NFL, and he worked with Colby Sorsdal, and said right after the pick was made that the Lions got a sleeper there. And so that doesn't mean he's going to be a future starter. It could mean he's just a good rotational guy. The Lions don't have a lot of good rotational depth long-term at guard. We saw them struggle with that last year with all the injuries. Now you got a guy that can potentially come in there, be a long-term solution, and maybe he's a backup at tackle too, because they need a long-term backup there as well. Maybe he Obina Eze and him battle out for a third or fourth offensive tackle spot on this roster. I like the upside of this pick. I can't say I've seen a lot of him at all, other than the clips that a lot of people were posting after the draft. But again, if people who are way better at scouting offensive linemen think this guy has a real potential to do something in the NFL, I'm willing to hop aboard.
I think I am too. By the way, William and Mary the nickname is Tribe. So it's William and Mary Tribe. And I think the one thing we have covered over pretty well is his interests off the field on the human side of things. From William and Mary's own website, he enjoys hunting, fishing, hockey, video games, music, and movies. I think people have mostly immediately penciled him in to be immediately going and taking a fishing trip with Frank Ragnow. I was watching his press conference. He was talking about, I don't know if he said he did it because mostly learning guitar, but really likes Nirvana, really likes Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure does.
Interesting. No, I liked his press conference. He's an interesting, happy-go-lucky kind of guy.
I find there's a lot of the guys like that on the offensive line, which is funny because you always talk about them and their plays like maulers. They're these physical maulers.
Yeah. The army unit that Stink would always talk about. Right. Yeah.
A lot of them really tend to be gentle giants.
It's beautiful. Nothing. I don't think we have really much to add about Colby.
Why would we? We want to get to the guy that you love.
Antoine Green, North Carolina Tar Heel. 7th round pick, and the Lions, because of one of their earlier moves, actually moved up 30 spots in the 7th round. So I believe he went 2-11. If that, I need someone to always check my math on
Doesn't
that. You
matter.
don't even know.
No one cares.
You just hear 7th round. Number. Damn. So he was the 2nd pick in the 7th round. So we told ourselves we wouldn't get into 7th rounders, that we wouldn't really get gussed up about them, might not even make the roster. But I liked Antoine Green at North Carolina. I really did. I know a lot of people put him as an X receiver. He's a little small to be an X receiver, but at the same time, he's got extra speed to him in that regard too. Like, he's just a fantastic kind of receiver for that archetype. I don't know where he really competes on this roster. If I think the suspensions that have been handed to Jamison Williams, that has also seen Quintez Cephas dismissed from this roster, opens up some spots, especially early on in the season, that he could make it. I know at North Carolina, he's just one hell of a workaholic in regard of like what he could do, how he worked as a receiver. He's going to be competing with guys like probably Trinity Benson and Tom Kennedy. I don't know if he stays on the roster long term, but I think the scenario is there for him to sit around for a little bit longer than people maybe think he might be there for, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting dude. Like, he's Marvin Jones, but quicker in terms of body type. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in terms of skill set. I don't think he's as physical of a receiver as Marvin Jones can be when it comes to, contested catches and things like that. But he's
Right.
faster, right? He wins in a different way than Marvin Jones. Maybe a little bit more comparable to Josh Reynolds then, who's 6'3", 196 to Antoine Green's 6'2", 201. Um, it, I don't think he's going to make the 53. I do think they're going to want to keep him around on the practice squad, because I do think they really like, even Jameson Williams aside, they got Amon-Ra, they got Josh Reynolds, they got Khalif Raymond, they got Marvin Jones. You know, I think they'll probably like Tom Kennedy better too, to start. But I don't know. I think long term he's a little bit different from what they have, especially long term guys, because Marvin Jones isn't going to stick around forever. He's got some special teams to him, so that could sneak him onto the roster, especially early. So yeah, I mean, I like the stab on traits. You got a fast, tall receiver who needs to maybe beef up a little bit to be a little bit more physical, but
Definitely also needs to. I know Brugler probably wrote. I believe that he also has to work on his his route trees as well,
yeah,
which probably slates him more towards the practice squad too. But
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think when you're this late in the draft, you're just it's totally okay to take a swing on traits, and a tall, fast receiver fits exactly what this team has always seemed to prioritize, and so he's got a shot, no question.
yeah.
And he'll benefit from the JMO stuff and the Cephas stuff, but I'm not expecting this guy to come out week one and grab 80 yards and a touchdown.
Right. And I'm not saying this translates completely to the NFL, but I remember watching him at North Carolina, and one of the things he really did well is like he could challenge safeties. He could really challenge safeties and just get past them, or just kind of just beat them to what he needed to do to just get some extra yards out of the play.
Stretch the defense out.
He really does. He really does. And I think that's what makes him the most exciting for me when I look at him. And I mean, he played with a decent quarterback prospect down there in Drake May in that final year. Like, I don't know what his NFL future is. I was really excited to see him available in the seventh round, though. I was so focused on like maybe the Lions go and grab Andrew Voorhees, maybe they add another lineman, another torn ACL, and try to, take a bargain bin there. And all of a sudden, I saw Antoine Green's name pop up. I'm like, oh damn, oh I remember him doing some things against NC State, like so. Yeah, this is I'm not going to be very polished in my analysis of him. I think that because again, as you say, like I just don't know where he's going to be in the NFL. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how much of this stuff really translates completely to the NFL. There is such a learning curve for any college player coming to the NFL, and when you are a day 3 7th round guy, that's even harder. Like that is saying I am behind the 8 ball, and I've got guys who are already fringe guys on these rosters who want to keep their spots. We said it before the draft, like 7th round guys aren't going to really be making this roster for the Detroit Lions because they don't need to go after 6th round guys, 7th round guys anymore.
And
You can
listen,
only hit on so many Amon-Ra St. Browns.
the other thing to keep in mind here, because I see a lot of people in our live audience saying like, no, he's obviously going to make the team. Like, who else do they have? Well, listen, this guy was a 7th round pick. They also picked up, reportedly at this point, picked up a couple UDFAs who are going to challenge, right? They're going to have other bodies, and I don't think a 7th round pick is going to be head and shoulders over a guy like Oregon's Chase Cota or Virginia's I'm going to butcher his name.
Kitayan Thompson. I'm just gonna
Thompson,
say that's what it is, and then people can get mad at me if I butchered it.
But yeah, like there's going to be a competition for that 4th or 5th spot, and I mean, who even knows how many they're going to carry, because they're going to like their tight end class. They're going to like their running backs. Maybe they only carry 4 or 5 wide receivers to 4 tight ends or 3 tight ends or 4 running backs. Like we don't know how that roster construction is going to happen, because I do think there are strengths at other positions on the roster. Probably going to keep a ton of defensive backs too. So
when JMO comes back, that's gonna, like, if he's already on the fringe, they got to kick someone out. Yeah, so like he's gonna have to work hard as hell this summer. He really is. So
and yeah, there's a current conspiracy theory amongst Pride of Detroit that Shane Zylstra could be moving to wide receiver based on his weight change, according to the team website. He was at 240, now he's at like 215. So maybe Shane Zylstra is in the cards at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Something to
I
think
think we
about.
promised we wouldn't talk about UDFAs too much here, so I'm not going to go into the rest of it. But
Yeah, let's recap
final,
then.
let's final thoughts, because I've seen some really fascinating discourse about what the Lions did.
Yeah.
Some people even positively talking about gushing about this class, but saying like this is the Lions in a going for it now mode. Which on one hand I kind of get, they've got some guys who can make an impact right now, but at the same time you look at some of the other guys they've done, and we have this now with the DeAndre Swift trade in mind as well. Some of the growth on these guys, if you're going into playoffs with this, with like several rookies in key positions like Laporta, Campbell, Gibbs, that makes you young. I don't know if that's really like, I don't know if that's really win now. I think that's more like win for the next 2-3 years. Try to keep your window young, keep your window open, get young as other pieces start to get older, like Anzalone, like, and that's I'm torn with this, Jeremy, because at one hand, when I hear going for it now, my body recoils a bit because it feels like that's a burn the boats moment. All hands, damn the torpedoes. We're just going for it right then and there. I just don't get that vibe from this draft class.
Well,
It feels like,
that's
yeah,
not what
go
the
on.
draft is, right? Like you're
No,
drafting for the
that's not what you
future.
do it. Yeah, you want to go for it now. That's free agency and
Right.
trades. That's not a draft.
Right. The only way that you really go for like a go for it now draft is trading all your picks for like one or two. Is like trading maybe even some future picks to get like that's win now. And I understand, like you said, I mean, it goes back to the point I've made a couple times now, which is like, yes, the draft played out where they're going to get immediate contributions from those first three guys and a couple other guys that they drafted, but that is more coincidence than I think intent. Because again, Devin Witherspoon was this team's pick at 6 overall. That is a future down the line pick. That was their intention, I think. And it just didn't work out that way. So instead, they got the next guy on their board who just so happens to fill a role right away as a, speedy running back receiver type. And Jack Campbell is, again, like, you could argue that's a long-term need too, because Alex Anzalone isn't going to be around forever. He'll probably play 2 out of the 3 years of his contract, and then you'll have to find someone else. And they found a guy right away that they like. So they're already preparing for the future there. So yeah, I don't think this is necessarily a win now draft. It kind of works out that way where, like I said, you're going to get some immediate contributions, and that should make Lions fans happy, because I saw a lot of people was like, please don't go corner at 6. Please don't go, so-and-so position at 6 where we're not like, this is 6. We need an immediate contributions. We need to win now. The window is now. The NFC window is now. Other teams are going to get better. There's no good quarterbacks in this conference. We need it now. No, that's not what the identity of this team
Some of the
should
Lions
be.
are even building. They should, like you've mentioned this a lot in the past. The Lions should be, and I believe are building, not just for a quick, like, let's take advantage of the NFC North in a down year. They want to build to be around and competing for a long time. That means reloading through the draft on positions you thought maybe that they're already good at, that maybe at some point they'll move on from those players to keep those positions cheap, that like everything's on the table for best player available, like that's what you do if you want to have a team that's going to stick around for a long time. Maybe not always going to be the best team year in and year out, but at least like having more good seasons than not.
And to borrow a word from our live chat that I like to describe what the Lions are doing is very fluid. If your cornerback of the future is on the board, you go get him. If he comes off the board, well, you don't just be like, well, crap, we got to get our next corner of the future. You don't say, hey, we got to get Christian Gonzalez because he's the next corner on our board and we've already committed to getting a cornerback of the future. You say, no, okay, we don't like Christian Gonzalez as much. Let's move to a different plan where, we are taking care of immediate need at running back, but it is also considered a long-term need because he's going to be around for the next 4 years where Swift was going to be at the door next year. So yeah, I like that this team is being able to be fluid in their strategy, not being stuck on necessarily one position that they have to take care of it. What did we go into this draft? They have to get a defensive tackle. They have to get a guard. No, they don't. They're okay right now. We've established that they filled most of their needs in free agency, so they can do whatever the hell they want and not reach for positional needs. So yeah, they did eventually get a defensive tackle way in round 3. Yeah, they eventually did get an offensive lineman way in round 6 or whatever it was. They didn't force it. And so I do like that about the draft. I do like, again, the fact that they are going hard on their offense and making sure that doesn't regress. And then they're going, I can't say I'm in love with the positional value stuff in the first round, but I understand it because they think they have these unicorns that are rare in this league. If you get a Christian McCaffrey, it's rare. If you get a, one of these crazy linebackers that gets paid millions of dollars and there's only like 5 of them in the league, that's rare, and that's value. Rare players are value, and Brad Holmes has shown that he's pretty good at finding rare players. So I'm optimistic. And listen, this is the time to be optimistic. There is no point in the offseason in any other 32 franchises that is more optimistic than Monday after the draft. That is the peak of optimism.
This is when it all, this is all, yeah. I think I don't want to use the word, like, here's the problem. I'd like to say it's kind of a shooting for the moon on some of these picks, like you're talking about with Gibbs and Campbell. But I guess that makes it sound like it almost seems a little too delusional. But there's at least, like, you trust, like, as a college scouting guy, you trust your abilities in this and hope that these guys pan out. I'm not going to say it ties legacy to anything right now, but this is probably this is going to be a draft that Holmes has probably staked a lot more of his reputation to than the past couple years. Just because of who he picked, how he picked, and just kind of the upside that you're hoping out of guys for, like Gibbs and Campbell and Hooker. But yeah, like I think he's earned the right to kind of do that this year. I won't ask for grades because that's stupid at this point. And we won't know what these guys are until 3 years or so down from here. But as you say, that's the fun of the draft.
Yeah.
That's why I say this week, you're allowed to have whatever take you want on the draft because it's like the purge. Just get it all out of your system. And then by Friday, we're going to act like this never happened and just go right back to work.
And listen, we get to see these guys in pads in 2 weeks. Maybe not pads, but we get to see them out there on the field. Rookie minicamp is just a couple weeks away. So all of this excitement, you don't have to wait that long to at least get a taste of what they're like on the field. And that's
a little nibble, a little morsel.
A little morsel.